Imagine holding a book that has not been read by a living soul for 2,000 years. The pages feel impossibly old, the ink a ghostly brown. But the real mystery is the script. It's elegant, precise, utterly alien. Every curve, every dot, every line is part of a system so complex, so self-contained, that it might as well be the thoughts of an extraterrestrial. For centuries, these texts have been the ultimate locked rooms of history. Beautiful, intricate, and completely silent. But what if the key isn't lost at all? What if it's been waiting, not in some dusty archive, but in the way we think, in the patterns we're wired to find, in the obsessive, brilliant, and sometimes utterly mad minds of those who refuse to let the past stay silent? Our first great breakthrough begins with a stone. Not a magical stone, but a stubborn, unyielding piece of rock that became the most coveted prize of empires. This is the story of the Rosetta Stone, and it's far more dramatic than any textbook suggests. Discovered in 1799 by French engineers digging a fort in Egypt, it was immediately recognized as something extraordinary. It bore the same decree in 3 scripts: ancient Greek, which everyone could read; Demotic, a common Egyptian script; and at the top, the sacred, unreadable hieroglyphs. When the British defeated the French, they didn't just win a battle, they seized the stone. But the real war was an intellectual duel that would rage for over 2 decades. In England, the towering intellect Thomas Young made the first crucial crack in the code. He noticed that the cartouches, those distinctive oval loops, seemed to encircle royal names. By comparing the Greek text, he correctly identified the name of Ptolemy. He was on the verge of something monumental, but he was held back by a fundamental assumption. He still believed most hieroglyphs were symbolic, not phonetic. Across the Channel, a fiercely competitive and relentlessly driven Frenchman, Jean-François Champollion, was obsessed. A linguistic prodigy who could speak a dozen languages by his teens, Champollion dedicated his life to the stone. He consumed every scrap of Coptic, the late-stage Egyptian language he could find, convinced it held the echoes of the ancient tongue. He worked himself into a state of physical collapse, suffering strokes that left him partially paralyzed. But in 1822, in a moment of pure, blinding insight that has become legendary in the annals of scholarship, he held up 2 different cartouches. One from the Rosetta Stone, which he knew read Ptolemy, and another from an Abu Simbel temple. He saw a recurring symbol and, based on his knowledge of Coptic, made a leap of faith. The symbol, which looked like a sun disk, had to represent the sound Ra. Suddenly, the cartouches began to speak. Ptolemy, Cleopatra, Rameses. The hieroglyphs weren't just mystical pictures, they were a sophisticated living language, a brilliant mix of phonetic signs, ideograms, and silent determinatives that guided the reader. In that single moment, the 3,000-year silence of the pharaohs was shattered. The world of the Nile, of its gods, its magic spells, its epic poetry, and its mundane tax records, was suddenly an open book. But while Egypt was yielding its secrets, another great civilization remained stubbornly, defiantly mute. In the dense, humid rainforests of Central America, the Maya had constructed breathtaking cities of stone, then, for reasons we still debate, abandoned them, leaving behind a forest of monuments covered in the most complex writing system ever created in the pre-Columbian Americas. For generations, the academic establishment, led by the formidable and influential Sir Eric Thompson, looked at these glyphs and saw art, maybe an elaborate calendar, but certainly not a literature capable of recording history. The prevailing theory was that the script was purely ideographic, a system of esoteric priestly concepts, not a tool for writing down the events of daily life. It took a radical outsider, working in the most unlikely of circumstances, to prove the entire Western academic world wrong. Enter Yuri Norizov, a young, brilliant Soviet linguist who had never even seen a Maya ruin. Working out of a cramped Leningrad apartment after the devastation of World War II, he proposed a theory so heretical it was openly ridiculed. He argued that the Maya script, like Egyptian hieroglyphs, was fundamentally phonetic. He was dismissed, mocked, and ignored for years. But he was right. His key was a handful of colonial-era documents like the Dresden Codex and the Relación de las Cosas de Yucatán, which contained Maya glyphs alongside Spanish explanations. By painstakingly cross-referencing these, he began to assign sound values to the symbols. The dam broke. Suddenly, the stone monuments of Tikal, Palenque, and Copan began to speak. We could read the names of kings like Pakal, the Great of Palenque, whose elaborate sarcophagus lid would later fuel wild, ancient astronaut theories. We could read about their bloody dynastic struggles, their precise astronomical observations of Venus and eclipses, their intricate religious rituals involving bloodletting and human sacrifice. The Maya weren't peaceful stargazers living in harmony with nature. They were a fiercely competitive society of warring city-states, and they wrote it all down in glorious, complex, and often brutal detail. But some texts don't just resist, they actively mock our efforts. They are the ultimate historical trolls, designed to drive sane men to the brink of madness. And none is more infuriatingly brilliant than the Voynich manuscript. This isn't just an unsolved mystery, it's a black hole for reputations. Discovered in 1912 by an antique book dealer named Wilfrid Voynich, this small vellum codex is a fever dream of the bizarre. It's filled with botanical illustrations of plants that don't exist on Earth, astronomical charts featuring constellations no one recognizes, and pages upon pages of naked women, their bodies intertwined, floating in a network of interconnected green tubs filled with a mysterious, glowing fluid. And it's all written in an elegant, flowing script that appears nowhere else on human history. Who wrote it? What does it say? No one has a clue. The world's best codebreakers have thrown up their hands in defeat. During World War II, the U.S. Army's top cryptanalysts, the same minds who cracked Japanese and German codes, took a shot at the Voynich manuscript. They couldn't solve it. Modern computational linguistics has subjected it to every known statistical analysis, finding properties that suggest it's a real language, not random gibberish, but without any known grammar or vocabulary to map it to. Is it an elaborate, centuries-old hoax created by a con artist to scam a wealthy emperor? Is it a lost herbal guide detailing forgotten medicines? Is it a manual for alchemy or even some form of tantric sex magic? Theories abound, but facts are non-existent. The manuscript sits today in a high-security vault at Yale University's Beinecker Rare Book and Manuscript Library, its secrets as secure as the day it was written, a humbling monument to the limits of human knowledge. Yet for every mystery that deepens, another is solved with such elegance and brilliance, it feels like a miracle. Consider the astonishing case of Linear B. Found in the ashes of the great Mycenaean palaces of ancient Greece, places like Mycenae with its Lion Gate and Pylos with its sprawling archives, this script was the ultimate locked box. The man who first excavated it, Sir Arthur Evans, was so convinced it wasn't Greek that he spent his life promoting a theory that it belonged to a hypothetical pre-Greek people he called the Minoans. The academic world followed his lead. The code was declared, for all intents and purposes, uncrackable. Then came the twist. The person who finally cracked it wasn't a tenured professor or a government-funded linguist. He was an English architect named Michael Ventris, an amateur who had been fascinated by the script since he was a teenager. Working in his spare time, he had a breakthrough of pure intuition. Some symbols were pictures, but others were syllables. As he assigned sounds, words formed, and they were Greek. The implication, was seismic. The world of Homer's Iliad and Odyssey, of Agamemnon and Helen of Troy, wasn't myth. It was history. Linear B wasn't epic poetry. It was palace bureaucracy, lists of oil, rations, and chariot wheels. It was the mundane paperwork of a Bronze Age superpower, but in that dry text, Ventris had found the ghost of Agamemnon. Tragically, in a cruel twist of fate that still haunts historians, Michael Ventris died in a car crash just weeks after announcing his world-changing discovery in 1953. He was only 34 years old, and he never got to see the new world of ancient history he had single-handedly created. The quest to decipher the past, however, is not confined to the great empires. Sometimes, the most poignant stories come from the most obscure corners of the map. Consider the kingdom of ancient Georgia, nestled between the Black Sea and the Caucasus Mountains. For centuries, its earliest history was a blank, lost in the fog of time. The key was found in a monastery high in the Sinai Desert, where a pair of Scottish scholars discovered a palimpsest, a manuscript where the original text had been scraped off and written over. Using cutting-edge multispectral imaging, they were able to recover the faint, underlying text. It was a Georgian lectionary, written in a script no one had ever seen. This was Asomtavruli, the oldest Georgian alphabet, and it opened a window onto a world that had been completely lost. We could now read about the conversion of the Georgian king to Christianity in the 4th century, a pivotal moment that shaped the nation's identity. We could read hymns and legal codes, giving voice to a people whose origins had been a mystery. It was a reminder that history isn't just about the players on the world stage, it's about the forgotten voices, the small kingdoms, the scribes in distant monasteries, all contributing to the grand tapestry of our story. These stories are more than just clever puzzles solved by clever people. They are acts of resurrection. Every deciphered text is a bridge across the chasm of time, allowing us to hear the voices of the dead, to understand their world on their own terms. When Champollion read the name of Ramesses II, he wasn't just translating. He was shaking hands with a god-king who ruled when Rome was a village. When Morozov deciphered the story of a Maya war, he wasn't just reading. He was witnessing a human drama of ambition and betrayal that unfolded while Europe was mired in the Dark Ages. And when Ventris proved the Mycenaeans were Greek, he wasn't just solving a code, he was giving a voice to the very foundations of Western civilization. The quest to crack these codes is a testament to the most human of all impulses, the refusal to let the past be silent. It's a race against the decay of time, against the fires that burned the Library of Alexandria, against the mold that consumes fragile papyrus, and against the simple, crushing weight of oblivion. Every day, another piece of our shared story is lost forever. But every day, somewhere in the world, another archaeologist brushes the dirt from a clay tablet. Another linguist stares at a string of symbols until their eyes burn and their mind reels. Another historian follows a hunch into a forgotten archive, driven by the simple, profound belief that the past has something to say to us. The greatest historical mysteries aren't just about finding treasure or uncovering conspiracies. They are about the fundamental need to connect, to understand our place in the long, winding story of humanity. The ancient texts are a mirror. In them, we see our own capacity for brilliance and brutality, for faith and folly, for creating things that outlast us, and for leaving behind riddles for future generations to solve. The conversation is still happening, and the next great discovery, the next voice from the silence, could be just one symbol away. The past is waiting, and it's time we started listening.